Jim Hall's solo on I Hear A Rhapsody is on many guitarists' most influential list, including me. Adam Smale here. My channel is geared for the intermediate player who wants to take their jazz chops to a whole other level. Jim has some very cool chordal and single note stuff jammed into this 5-chorus solo. I'm going to highlight 5 spots that demonstrate why this solo clinched Jim as the godfather of modern jazz guitar. Let's start with how he begins the solo. He only plays chord tones in the first 2 measures. He plays the third of A minor 7 flat 5 a little early. It grinds against the F minor 7 chord only briefly. Then he plays the 5th of A minor 7 flat 5, quickly resolving it to the 3rd of B minor 7, which is also the 3rd of B flat 7. Genius! Notice how the next 10 measures start and end. They're mostly comprised of upbeats. It's something that he does a lot, and he does it in a lot of solos. It makes everything feel light and gives everything a great sense of forward motion. This is a great example of a way to start a solo off because he leaves lots of room to grow. We all can learn from that. If you start off burning at 100%, you have no room to let your solo build on itself. It also contains some chromatic runs here and here, reminiscent of Charlie Parker, which was likely somewhat of an early influence. You literally could pluck a finger down anywhere in the solo and it would be something amazing. Now, here at around the 1 minute 6 second mark, Jim plays octaves, but it's not the octave sound that's associated with Wes Montgomery. He creates a cool rhythm by displacing the octaves, something I always thought was a cool twist, and I don't think I've heard anyone else do this in their solos. Let me know in the comments if you've heard of this same octave approach before. At around 1 minute 26 seconds, Jim plays this rare but cool bebop influence line weaving through the chord changes. Sounds like, again, a Charlie Parker or Paul Desmond inspired approach, again finishing the line off with a stream of chromatic notes. But these are not just chromatic notes for the sake of playing chromatic notes. They all lead to a resolving note of some kind. Take note of that. Okay, the trio really picks it up a couple of notches here. Then at the 2-minute and 41-second mark, he leads into this really hip, modern-sounding 3-note riff pattern that could probably sound like a modern metal group if you were to play it with a lot of high gain distorted sound. He is stacking fifths and moves it around to the chord of the moment. He often plays a tritone sub instead of the original chord. It's a very cool idea, right? The way he puts the lick together is a masterclass of chord substitution, and it sounds so good. You normally think of tritone substitutions only occurring on dominant 7 chords. However, he does some very cool tritone substitutions on some chords that aren't dominant 7. If you thought of the F minor 7 as an F7, he substitutes it for a B or B7, E7 for the B flat 7, then a C sharp 7 instead of G minor 7 flat 5. Then by substituting F sharp for the C7, it drops nicely back into the F minor 7 on the next line. One more tritone sub here on the B flat 7 before he ends that section off by sliding into a 3-note voicing for a D7 sharp 9 from a half step above. That's called planing in the arranging world. At around the 3-minute 27-second mark, Jim once again shows us how much of a chordal master he was by playing a veritable feast of really cool chords and chord substitutions to create a fantastic close. Jim often simplifies a 2-5 by disregarding the 2 altogether and concentrating just on the 5 chord. And he does that here by playing this C diminished voicing that creates a D7 flat 9 sound over the A minor 7 flat 5 and D7, where those chords normally would be played. He superimposes this D major triad over the G minor chord. Since there's no other comping instrument, Jim is able to bend the chords a little. By playing this D major triad, he's hinting around a G minor major 7 chord. And that's kind of like why I like playing in a trio setting, because sometimes you can mess with the harmony a little bit. Then a B flat major triad over the C minor chord. It's basically a B flat over a C sound. A C minor 11 with no third. Next, he goes to a different D major triad superimposed over the F7 chord to create F13 flat 9. That's one of Jim's favorite sounds. He moves these stacked fourths here over the B major 7, then up a minor third to create the F minor 7 sound. Once again, slides down a half step to the E flat and F sharp notes to hint at a D7 flat 9 sound. And again, taking liberties with the harmony. Normally that chord would be a D minor 7 flat 5. This is a really interesting G7 sound here that twists the ear, and I think in a good way. It has the natural 9 and a sharp 11 in it. Then the last 8 measures starts with a rootless C minor 11 voicing to an E major triad, which creates a G flat 9 sus sound with the bass playing a G flat underneath. That slides down a half step very smartly to this F minor 11 voicing. Then he jumps down to this E7 shell voicing that essentially is a tritone sub for what's normally a B flat 7 chord there. That slides beautifully into an E flat 7 sharp 9, which is usually played as a E flat major 7 chord. He then takes that same basic shape, moves it down a half step again to get A flat 13. Once again, moves that exact same shape down another half step to create G13 instead of G minor 7 flat 5. And one last time, yet again, moves that shape down another half step, which creates a C sharp 9 sharp 11. From here on out, some of these chord voicings are kind of a little bit hard to explain theoretically, but sometimes theory gives way to logical movement of sound is the best way that I can describe it. Check this out. This 3-note F minor 7 voicing moves to this diminished voicing that he uses all the time, but he would typically use this voicing for an E7 sharp 9 or a G7 flat 9 for just a couple of examples. I think he was kind of like on the spot, scrambling a little bit, kind of like on the fly, trying to figure out a voicing to play that works with A minor 7, A flat minor 7, and was concerned about the lowest notes and the highest notes the most, which are the root and the third of A flat minor 7. Even though the other notes in the middle are technically wrong, it's kind of close enough to the chord so it sort of works. Then he plays a D major 7 voicing for a B minor 9 sound, which then moves to a very typical E13 voicing that all of us guitarists do, and it functions as the tritone sub of another B flat 7 chord. Now here is where it gets really interesting. He lands on this very typical G minor 7 flat 5 voicing to get an E flat 9, then does the same trick that he just did a few measures ago. He moves the shape down a half step to get an A flat 7 flat 9 sharp 5. Moves it down a half step to once again forego the 2 chord D minor 7 flat 5 to get a G7 flat 9 sharp 5. Then takes that same shape down, which is just an E minor 7 flat 5 voicing, but here it's a bit of a gray area of what this chord is functioning as. What would you call it? I listed it as a G13 sharp 9, but you could argue that it makes sense logically to our ear because it's just a continuation of the same shape, the same sound, that's just logically following through. then all that buildup of all those somewhat tense sounding descending minor 7 flat 5 chords resolves nicely to this rootless C minor 11 voicing. If you want to study and steal some of Jim's tricks, you can get the whole solo from me. The link to grab the 5-chorus solo, 9 pages in total, is below. It's in standard notation and tab. What are you waiting for? Getting the whole solo is just a couple of clicks away. Click the link below and I'll see you over there.